Hello there, I'm Gloria Makarenko. Now, even when times are tough, many of us are finding and sharing sources of inspiration and comfort. This is Our Vancouver. Coming up, live music is back at some local restaurants. We'll hear what it's like from one of the musicians. Then, were nightclubs already on the way out when COVID hit? And is it possible to build them back better? But first, from marching in the streets to strutting down the runway, two different ways of fighting for racial justice. Now, you may recognize Nova Stevens as one of the organizers of two major marches for Black Lives Matter in Vancouver earlier this year. Well, now she has also been named this year's Miss Universe Canada. Nova Stevens, congratulations to you.
Thank you, Gloria. Thank you so much.
So what does this mean for you to get a title like that, Miss Universe Canada?
Well, first it means that I get to go to Miss Universe to represent Canada, which has been a dream of mine for the longest time. I didn't think I could ever represent Canada on a global stage because I never saw people like me representing Canada at Miss Universe. So to be able to conquer a goal that I once thought was impossible just makes me so happy.
And what is exactly involved in getting a title like that? What do you have to do?
A lot. Contrary to popular belief, you have to do a lot. There's a lot of preparation that goes behind it. I had a public speaking coach. I had obviously a fitness coach, a runway coach. You have to be very up to date with what's going on around the world. So these are not just women that are beautiful, but they're knowledgeable women. They are confident women. They're empowered women that just want to do the same for other women as well.
Okay, and now that you've got the title, how demanding is that role?
It's pretty demanding.
Yeah, you have duties even now?
I do, but because of COVID, we're unable to do a lot of the things that I would normally do. Normally, I'd be in Nicaragua right now with Operation Smile, which is another organization that Miss Universe Canada works alongside with. They operate on kids who have cleft lip and cleft palate. So because of that, I'm obviously here in Vancouver. But it's just been, for me, it's just been educating people about racism and racial inequality. Because although I can't physically go out there, I do have a voice and I'm using it as much as I can.
Well, I really wanted to get at that because it was interesting to see in your speech at the competition, you said, I want you to see color. Because seeing color does not mean that you're racist. So how would you like people to see the world?
I want people to see the world for what it is. I feel like oftentimes we are naive to what's going on, especially if it's not directly affecting us. You shouldn't have to be a person of color for you to see that people of color are being mistreated solely based on the color of their skin. So when I say I want you to see color, that's exactly what that means. See us and see that we are being treated differently because of the color of our skin.
Now, Black Lives Matter rallies, pageant, that type of thing. Tell me a little bit about your family's history.
Well, I'm originally from South Sudan, so I'm Sudanese descent. I immigrated to Canada at the age of 6 with my cousin, leaving my immediate family behind. My family is currently still in Africa. My mother is in a UN camp, actually. And a lot of people don't know what's going on in South Sudan, but it's very war-torn, and it's been in the state of war for the past 6 years, I would say. So my mother is stuck in a UN camp while my father and my siblings are in Ethiopia. So I would love to get her out and unite my family and see them for the first time in 22 years, because it's been that long, unfortunately.
Oh, that's amazing. So who brought you up here?
My cousin.
I see. Yeah.
So,
okay, let's fast forward to a really tumultuous year with some really important issues being discussed. And we saw thousands of people turn out to Vancouver's Juneteenth march following the murder of George Floyd back in May. And I know you were one of the organizers of the rally there. Where do you see the Black Lives Matter movement today?
Gloria, I don't even like to call it a movement because this is human rights we're fighting for. It's not a movement that you just join and then all of a sudden you leave behind. It should be a lifestyle for all of us. Fighting for human rights should be a basic necessity and a lifestyle for everyone, not just people of color. I hate to admit, but I do find that a lot of people have just kind of fallen off the bandwagon. It's no longer trendy for people to be involved with Black Lives Matter. It's no longer relevant, and that saddens me because we have still yet to tackle the issues of race.
That's very interesting that you put it that way. Maybe because it was perceived as a movement. It's like, yeah, I want to join. Okay, now my attention is over here. Is it an attention issue, or why do you think that's happening? Why has the attention fallen off?
I think maybe the lack of coverage. It's no longer the topic of every news station. During that time, every station was covering things related to Black Lives Matter. So because of that, people don't feel the need or the pressure to be a part of it, I think.
I see. So what do you hope to change about that? I guess what can you do about that practically here on the ground in Vancouver?
Continue to educate people. I think we have to continue to talk about it. We cannot let the issue, die down and by being silent. We have to continue the conversations. Even when people don't want to hear it, you have to continue talking about it. And I think that's something that we can all do collectively.
Well, we're talking about it right now, aren't we?
We are. Thank you.
What would you say to other people? I mean, I'm just thinking about the reason that some women get into pageants in the first place. And this was actually your third go around with International Canada, right?
Miss Universe Canada. I would say, even if you think that you are not what they're looking for, be the pioneer of change. You can always be the first of the things that you think are so impossible to achieve.
I think that's a really positive message to end things on. Are you already, I just wanted to get back to Juneteenth and that type of thing. Are you already planning on what you'd like to see happen next year?
Absolutely. I mean, Shamika Mitchell and I, this is something that we've started. There's no way that we're just going to stop at one, March. It's going to be every year an annual event. Juneteenth as well as Emancipation Day, which is actually more towards the Canadian side. That is when slavery was abolished in the British colonies, which included Canada. So we're going to definitely do more for sure. Absolutely.
Nova, it is so nice to meet you. Congratulations again.
Thank you, Gloria. Thank you so much.
Hey, I'm Drew, and this is Gruen Brothers Hat Shop in Yaletown, and you are watching Our Vancouver.
All right, it's time for one of our favorite features. This is where we get to showcase a number of the photographs sent in by you, our audience. Well, here is a photo of Danny, the mini Aussie dog, clearly enjoying a sunny day at Maple Ridge Park. Thank you so much, Amina Khan, for sending us that lovely photograph, full of joy. Now check out this colorful photo of cranberries being harvested against a backdrop of shipping containers in Richmond. Thank you, Jason Cole, for that one. And finally, Leslie Diesler sent us this photograph taken at Kitts Beach of a man quietly paying homage to a Second World War vet. Leslie was just looking for a quiet place to reflect on her own dad's contribution. So thank you so much, Leslie, for giving us all something to remember. And please do send us more. It's easy. Just email your photographs to us, bcphotos@cbc.ca. One word, bcphotos@cbc.ca. Well, coming up, new evidence of a link between warmer climate and stronger hurricanes. Johanna Wagstaff is going to explain what that could mean for Canada.
Hurricanes are some of the most intense weather systems this planet has to offer. And because of climate change, they're becoming more intense, dropping more rainfall, are forming in areas they didn't used to, and are rapidly intensifying at alarming speeds. And now we're learning that they also may be taking longer to wind down once they do hit the coast. This new study from scientists at the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology shows that hurricanes are staying stronger for longer once they make landfall, which means they're extending their damaging path farther inland. The team analyzed all landfalling storms in the North Atlantic Basin from 1967 to 2018, and they found a slower rate of hurricane decay since they're now holding on to more moisture picked up from warmer sea surface temperatures. In fact, hurricanes during the course of the first 24 hours after landfall are weakening almost twice as slowly now than they did 50 years ago. Computer model simulations of hurricanes showed that additional moisture is most likely the main cause for these trends. The team created computer simulations of 4 different hurricanes and then set different temperatures for the surface of the sea. Once each virtual hurricane reached Cat 4 strength, the scientists simulated landfall by cutting off the supply of moisture from beneath. That's when they found that even though each simulated storm made landfall at the same intensity, the ones that developed over warmer waters, well, they took more time to weaken. If these trends continue, it could make hurricanes even more costly. They're already one of the costliest natural disasters in North America. And with a busy season already meaning around 3 hurricanes that enter into Atlantic Canadian waters each year, a warming world will mean the potential for greater impact on our Canadian communities, even a few hundred kilometers inland. The researchers now plan to study hurricane data from other regions of the world to determine whether this trend is occurring around the globe. So stay tuned. And now you're Science Smart. If you have a science question on your mind, send me a tweet and I'll try to get it answered.
Looks my way or calls my name. That seems to me there's trouble.
Now, it's going to be some time before musicians start packing stadiums or arenas again, but live music is returning to some local restaurants. Geoff Gibbons is a local singer-songwriter, and he performs 3 days a week at Cardero's down in Cole Harbour, and that's where he is right now. Geoff, hello there.
Hey, Gloria, how are you today?
I am doing well, so thank you so much for making time for us. Just how has the pandemic affected your ability to work as a musician?
Well, of course, when the first lockdown came back in, I guess, March, it happened pretty quickly. We were playing 7 nights a week down here, and basically one day they just said, "Look, we gotta shut her down." I got a phone call at home, and we stopped playing, and it was literally 7 months, I guess, that we were off. And we've just recently started about 3 or 4 weeks ago, back up playing again. So it's been great.
So what is that like? You're right there. You're right next to where you would normally be performing.
Yeah, right. Yes, exactly. Cardero's is great. They've always been really supportive of live music, and they wanted to get the music back happening as quickly as possible. So they found this solution where they took part of the wall out and made a little area for the artist to sing, and covered in plexiglass, sort of surrounded it with plexiglass, so that we were in our own little kind of see-through recording studio, it looks like, and people can enjoy and come in and feel safe, and the artists can feel safe as well, that to know, I guess they call them moisture droplets, are going to be going around the room.
That's right. It has affected singers for sure. What's that like for you, though, being sort of in that little plexiglass box performing?
It's different, Gloria. I mean, I'm so used to being out in amongst the group and talking to folks, and we usually have a lot of interaction. The one change, of course, is that you are a little bit separated, but it doesn't take away from the ambience of the music reaching the room, which is great. It's just a little different for the artist.
Well, and how have you seen business been affected there at Cardero's? I mean, are you still able to mingle with some of the regulars?
Well, yeah, as long mask on, of course, right? And social distancing, which we all adhere to. And of course, the restaurant has had to go by health regulations by keeping the amount of people that come in down. But we've still seen a nice group of people that come in, and everybody's separated. And so bringing the music back has really created that vibe that Cardero's is known for along with all the other great things that go with the restaurant, of course.
Right.
But,
A little sense of normalcy, even if it's just a little bit. I understand. Now, what about as a musician and a songwriter? Any inspiration due to the pandemic?
well, you and I were talking earlier about one of my side project was COVID classics, where I was taking classic songs and rewriting the lyrics sort of as parodies to be funny, during a pandemic, as trying to create some mirth in a tough time. But as far as recording and writing my original music, that's basically stayed the same. And I think a lot of artists have been homebound, as we said, and so have been writing and recording and getting their music up probably more than regular times.
Okay, so what are some of your pandemic takes on some popular songs?
Oh dear. Well, I had, of course, Homebound, which was a take on Simon and Garfunkel's Homeward Bound. That was the first one. And take off of Dylan's Positively 4th Street, which was Positively Ignorant. That's when we were seeing things like hoarding and people not wearing masks. And so it was a little bit of a rant. And my latest one is Space Calamity, which is about nothing else to do but shop on Amazon.
Okay. I'm sure those are crowd pleasers, I'm sure. Now, I understand you also took the time to record a song with a former Cardero's bartender. How did that come about?
Well, that's great that you guys saw that. Vicky used to work here, and we sang together a lot. And during the lockdown, we ended up speaking and decided to put that project together that we'd wanted to do for like 8 years. And it's called Casio Gems. And we just released our first single, which is a cover of Bruce Springsteen's I'm on Fire.
Well,
And
I'm glad. I'm so glad you're keeping busy. I'm glad that you've picked up your gig at Cardero's again, Geoff. So if people want to catch you at Cardero's, you're performing Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays at 9. Is that right?
Yes, I am. Absolutely. Love to see you.
Okay. Take good care. Thanks again.
Thanks, Gloria.
A lot of big events have been canceled, gone online, or adapted to COVID-19 since the pandemic hit. The Chutzpah Festival of International Jewish Performing Arts will still have 2 live COVID-safe shows this year. Hourglass, a new dance and music show by Edan Cohen, and a comedy night featuring the Jewish-Palestinian couple, the El Solomons. You can also choose to watch those online, along with the rest of the festival, which runs from the 21st to the 28th. Check out the full program at chutzpahfestival.com. Reciprocity and ecological sustainability are 2 big themes of spirit and tradition. It's an all-ages show by the Indigenous group Dancers of Damala Hamid. The pre-recorded performance, which features coastal masked dance, is set in BC's coastal mountains and Pacific Ocean, and it aims to convey lessons about balance, interconnectedness, and community. It will be online November 23rd to the 30th, and access is by donation. For more information, go to newworks.ca.
Hey, I'm Grant Lawrence from CBC Music, here to rock you out with a new song by a band called the Elwins from lovely Keswick, Ontario, on the shores of Cook's Bay in Lake Simcoe. This friendly indie rock band started out in high school and has now been around for more than a decade. The Elwins broke out in 2015 with this song. channeling the Strokes and the Arctic Monkeys there. That is the Elwins with their breakout song So Down Low, which peaked at number 12 on the Canadian Alternative Chart. The Elwins bettered that ranking a few years later with this song.
Get attached.
Yeah, there you go, showcasing a more contemporary sound and vibe. That was the Elwins with Hey Ya You from 2017, and that peaked at number 6 on the alternative chart, their most successful single to date. Now, the Elwins have ridden the energy of those songs by bringing their over-the-top, engaging live show to fans all over the world in the before times, touring across North America, Europe, and Japan. This fall, the band releases their new album. It's called 4, and it features a video that is a kind of a cross between the great outdoors, Waco, and the Blair Witch Project. Check it out.
I thought I could tell what I was feeling was what you were feeling, but now it's clear as well that you're never, ever gonna be my girl. Girl, 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 hey, hey. Will I ever come down? Will I ever come down? Girl, 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 hey, hey. Will I ever come down? Will I?
We know you saw.
Let us show you.
Hung up, you got me. Hung up, you do. I've never met someone like you. Hung up, you got me. Hung up, you do. I've never met someone like you.
Oh yeah, getting their cult on in the woods. That was the Elwins with their new song with the huge chorus called Hung Up. And that video was directed by Wyatt Clough and filmed at a little spooky cabin in the woods near Kingston. The Elwins' fine new album 4 came out on October 23rd, and Hung Up is the song that you need to add to your isolation playlist for this week. I'm Grant Lawrence from CBC Music. Stay safe, support Canadian music, don't join a cult, and I'll check in with you again next week.
Hello, I'm Mike in Yaletown, and this is our Vancouver.
Coming up, nightclubs were already in decline before COVID hit. Could this be an opportunity to hit the reset button? Hi, welcome back to Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Makarenko. Now, COVID-19 has changed our lives in so many ways. In part 2 of his series, The Non-Essentials, Yute Lee looks at the history and the future of nightclubs.
May 11th, 2020, Itaewon, South Korea. A 29-year-old man visits 5 nightclubs partying with 7,200 people. 5 days later, he tests positive for COVID-19, and today over 80 new cases in the country have been linked to this person. Koreans are outraged, and I now have an intro for this video.
Clubs are clearly going to be an issue as we recover from this pandemic, and I think that gives us an opportunity to reconsider clubbing altogether.
During the pandemic, we've heard about the essentials, groceries, walking, tigers. I want to talk about everything else, what we've deemed the non-essentials.
Clubbing is the opposite of what we should be doing during this pandemic. This is not social distancing. This is not practicing good hygiene. And that alcohol should really be going on your hands.
So it's no surprise that the nightlife industry is really struggling right now. Lockdown measures around the world mean most clubs won't be open for a while. And sure, many have proposed alternatives, but they aren't exactly great. That's not a rave, that's a traffic jam. The result of all that has been thousands of layoffs and permanent closures.
Now, I'm sure this is devastating news if you're like 2020, but are most of us all that bummed out about this? I mean, when was the last time you were at a club? I looked into this, and it seems like clubs were already in trouble before the pandemic.
This is a map of London's nightclubs in 2005, and here are the ones that were closed by 2015. The city has lost half of its original clubs, and a similar story appears to be unfolding in many areas across the world. Clubbing is very much in decline.
This was all happening before coronavirus hit the scene, so who's really to blame here?
Well, surprise, surprise, it's the millennials. Yup, notorious for ruining institutions such as marriage, doorbells, diamonds, cereal, and napkins, millennials can also proudly take credit for the decline of clubbing. The reasons why are complex. There's the rise of new technology providing cheaper and more convenient alternatives to what clubbing used to provide. For hookups, you can use Tinder or Bumble. If you want to discover new music, there's Spotify or TikTok memes. Then there's the changing economy. Millennials often don't have the same job security and incomes of previous generations, so it's understandable that we might be hesitant to pay $20 for cover and $13 for a Heineken. Finally, some say that young people today are just different. Instead of going out and partying, we're Netflix and chilling and practicing self-care. We've single-handedly created a renaissance in hobbies like gardening, embroidery, and journaling. Could it be that millennials have just gone mild?
Well, as a millennial myself, I'm not going to take these comments sitting down. I do plenty of adventurous things. Sometimes I even drink wine while playing Settlers of Catan. So, in my opinion, before we blame young people for the decline of clubbing, I think we should critically examine clubs themselves, because they've changed.
The nightclub used to be way cooler. Many trace the modern nightclub's history to the discotheque of the 60s and 70s. Direct drive turntables like the SL1200 created the role of the DJ, who would mix records for rooms packed with dancers. It was new, flashy, it had that ball. But it was also political, born out of profound social upheaval. It created spaces for gay sexuality and the first generation of post-civil rights Black Americans. At the Stonewall Club, a riot against police kicked off decades of LGBT activism. Then in the 80s, the underground rave parties of the US and London injected a new sense of counterculture to clubbing. During the Reagan and Thatcher era, ravers were anti-establishment and grassroots, often organizing shows in empty warehouses. These parties, with the help of new synthesizers like Roland's TR-808 and TB-303, created whole new music scenes. House in Chicago, techno in Detroit, trance in Germany, jungle in Black British communities, garage house in New York, and countless other subgenres of EDM.
But as we partied our way into the millennium, clubbing became more and more a commercial venture. Nightclubs marketed themselves to a richer clientele, cover charge and drinks became more expensive, and ultimately, these clubs lost their activist grassroots and became much more obsessed with looking exclusive, creating lineups, managing guest lists, and enforcing dress codes.
In the process, they ended up all kind of offering the same thing, playing the same music, and dancing the same dances. Researchers Paul Chatterton and Robert Hollins observed this trend in the mid-2000s, noting that in many Western cities, urban nightlife is experiencing a McDonaldization, where big branded names are taking over large parts of downtown areas, leaving consumers with an increasingly standardized experience.
While the original clubs might have hosted innovative underground movements that spread new sounds and culture, many clubs today are highly commercial enterprises that are increasingly bland and irrelevant. But there's one more side to the story here.
Let's talk about TED, the Toronto Entertainment District. It was once an industrial area until a decline in Canadian manufacturing left it mostly empty in the 1970s. Then, it became ground zero for Toronto's clubbing scene. Cheap lands and rents turned empty warehouses into clubs like Go-Go, 23 Hop, Club Max, Limelight, and Crocodile Rock, which then attracted tens of thousands of clubbers on weekends.
But in recent years, Toronto's land values have skyrocketed, and TED has become a hotspot for something else: condominiums.
Way more people live here now. The population inside TED exploded from under 750 in 1996 to over 35,000 in 2019. What does that look like? Well, this is Crocodile Rock in 2007, and here's what that block looks like today. Many of those new residents really don't like having clubs as neighbors, as they often attract public intoxication, aggressive behavior, and dude bros. In the mid-2000s, noise complaint after noise complaint escalated into an all-out war. Resident groups formed to pressure the government to clamp down on nightclubs and eventually get rid of them. I think this councillor's statement from 2009 sums it up nicely. The quickest way to get rid of a nightclub is to approve a condo that displaces the nightclub. Therefore, you can start to stabilize the district.
In the battle of the clubs versus the condos for the heart of Toronto, the clubs lost badly. In the mid-2000s, the Toronto Entertainment District had almost 100 nightclubs. By 2013, that number had fallen to just 30. A similar story has played out in other cities like Berlin, London, Paris, and Sydney. Development, rising rents, and residential opposition are shutting down nightclubs block by block. We need to understand that all that is very much connected to the McDonaldization of the club. Cities are putting a lot of pressure on their nightlife, and the commercialized, exclusive club charging top dollar for cover and drinks is really the only kind of club that can afford to survive. That's a shame, because I think that's robbing us of some of the very best kinds of nightlife.
I came across a paper by sociologist Tammy Anderson called Better to Complicate Rather Than Homogenize Urban Nightlife. She writes that you can't group clubbing into one generic concept. Nightlife is really complex and exists on a continuum between large, highly commercial mainstream places and smaller, underground, and independent spaces. For example, in my city of Vancouver, there's an artist workspace and venue called the Redgate Art Society that hosts shows like
Penta, a night of two-spirit, queer, people of color, rage, and futurism.
Might not be everyone's cup of tea, but that's not the point. These places aren't focused on making as much money as possible. They have a different agenda. I think their website describes it best.
If there is to be a cultural scene in Vancouver at all, there needs to be places where young and emerging artists can spend the time it takes to develop their skills and talents, overcome obstacles, and everything else that is required to realize their full potential.
I think this is some of the best kinds of nightlife. The kinds that can start new scenes, genres, maybe even movements. But this kind of nightlife is also falling victim to the larger trends impacting nightclubs. The Redgate Art Society was recently evicted from their old building, and they narrowly avoided closing due to rent increases at their current location. So I have a proposal. As we come out of this pandemic, I think we have an opportunity to revisit our nightlife with a lot more intention. Many nightclubs were already on their way out before COVID-19. I don't think we'll miss them. But there are other emerging forms of nightlife that could really use our support, that need us to protect venues, keep rents low, and remind condo residents that they live downtown, not in a national park. I really hope we can do that, because who knows, we might end up sowing the seeds of new movements, new music, or at the very least, a really good party.
Coming up, Japanese gardens are calming in their simplicity, but they also have a rich and complex history here in Western Canada. Hi, welcome back to Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Makarenko. Now, there are two more CBC documentaries set in BC on CBC Gem as part of the Absolutely Canadian series. The first is Creatures of Convenience, and it highlights just how integrated plastic is in our everyday lives, from food packaging to clothing. But it also offers concrete things we can do to reduce waste in our daily lives.
And let's say I live to the age of 75. I estimated that in my lifetime, I will use 325 pairs of underwear, 425 pairs of socks, 563 toothbrushes, 375 t-shirts, 34 rain jackets, 112 pairs of shoes, 9,125 wash loads, 6,083 dryer loads, 19,150 takeout coffees, 3,910 takeaways, 23,400 yogurt pots, 15,600 loads of dishes, 11,700 plastic bags, 400 bins of landfill, 1,300 bins of recycling, and a lifetime not fully understanding the implications of all those very convenient items or activities. this is a little concerning. I didn't quite realize to what extent we had an addiction to plastic. And therefore, I think I'm going to give myself a bit of a challenge. As of tomorrow morning, I'm going to try and go plastic-free for 24 hours and just see if it's actually possible, which I don't know if it is, but we'll see. It's all plastic. Time for cereal. Well, that was a stupid idea. Plastic, 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 plastic. Used a lot of plastic. This is really hard. This was a total fail. I need some help. And that help will come in the form of my friend, Anna Pasaka, head of the plastics lab at Oceanwise. Hey, Anna.
Hi, Stuart.
You ready to go?
Ready, let's do this.
So why did you start working with plastics?
Plastics is a material that's deeply embedded in our society. While it offers many advantages to our modern way of life, it also puts pressure on our environment.
Well, look at this. All that hard work paid off, huh? So going on an activity like this, like going for a bike ride with a friend, you want to feel like you're getting away from things like plastic, technology, etc. But are we still surrounded by plastic? Am I encased in plastic?
We definitely brought a lot of plastic with us. So even our clothing, our shoes, our water bottles, the wrappers from the energy bars, all of those are examples of the items that have plastics. So plastics have certainly helped us with food preservation, more comfort in terms of clothing. So it's important to recognize that it's not a bad material per se. It's the fact that the way we produce and consume and manage plastics is creating challenges for our oceans and for our environment.
So when I go on this journey, am I going to be able to find people in BC who care enough about this issue?
I'm confident that you'll find many wonderful people working locally to better the environment through innovation around plastic packaging and recycling and social behavioral change and so on. So there's a lot of great people working on the issue, and I'm actually quite excited and energized by the idea that there are a lot of us who want to make change. It's just that the problem in a number of ways is quite large and complex. So sometimes solutions are not very straightforward.
Let's go find these people in this forest we're in.
Next up, Borrowed from Nature. It explores the complex history and meaning of Japanese gardens in Western Canada. And that includes the Nitobe Memorial Garden at UBC.
This morning, I went to Nitobe Garden. It is so beautiful, and no difference from Japanese garden in Japan.
Japanese gardens are steeped in history. They employ symbols, metaphors, and invite viewers to interpret them. This is what makes them art. Roisumi was a master gardener, interned in Canada during the war and celebrated by the Emperor of Japan at the end of his life. His career helped establish these gardens as works of art.
All historic sites, no matter where they are, right, always have to have a key person. They inspire the other people surrounding them that they become a force.
Well, I think that when you actually walk into the garden, your physiology changes. That's the way I look at it as a biomedical scientist. I think a garden, the combination of what you see and what you hear and what you smell, all that has an effect on your physiology.
I think the garden is kind of a symbol that tribalization doesn't have to occur. You don't have to be a Nikkei to enjoy or to feel that the garden is yours. You know, it's here for the whole community.
This should be a case study on what Canada wants to be. This is what they claim they are: multicultural, multi-ethnic. Trouble is, we talk it, we don't always do it.
Today, there is what some call the Cherry Blossom Trail. It connects the gardens of Vancouver, Lethbridge, and New Denver.
I think there are lessons to be learned from that, from the whole telling of all these intricacies of this story. There's a dual sense here of both positive feelings about the garden, almost a pride, because it is so beautiful, but also some pain.
To them, there's a Japanese word, kind of shogunai, which, you can't help it.
And that was the first time I've ever heard my mother talk about it. She has sort of put it aside.
In between these gardens is the story of so many Japanese Canadians. And in between those lives is a man who found a calling in the balance between nature and art. What can a garden tell us about the past, the present, and the future?
Now, about 93 years ago, Ernie Coombs was born in Lewiston, Maine. And in his 30s, he moved to Canada, where he became better known as Mr. Dress-Up. In this week's look into our archives, we look at the long, much-loved legacy of the children's entertainer. Ian Hannah-Mansing brought us that story.
People on the bus go up and down, up and down, up and down.
16 years after Mr. Dress-Up's last show, 11 years after his death, Ernie Coombs was honored today in a way he could never have imagined, the so-called Google Doodle. Across Canada, anyone using the search engine today saw this.
It reminds us at a time when we have tablets and smartphones and television that sometimes simple is best.
Simplicity embraced in the high-tech offices of Google Canada, where staffers asked head office to create the whimsical countrywide tribute.
I think the pitch was something along the lines of, every single Canadian loved this guy, and we want to celebrate him, and I think they kind of bought into our enthusiasm.
The artist in California who created this has done lots of doodles for children's characters like from Sesame Street, but Mr. Dress-Up sent him, well, searching through Google.
I had had a friend once refer to a tickle trunk before, and I had a Canadian friend. I had no idea what she was talking about. It was great because it was, not too different from some of the children's shows that I grew up loving in the U.S. And as I learned more about Mr. Dress-Up, I wish I had the show in the U.S.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Ernie Coombs' daughter says he would have been thrilled, even though
Dad never used a computer, and he certainly didn't know what Google was. And he, as much as I encouraged him to try and use a computer, he was always that person that returned fan letters in a handwritten form.
What's Google? Well, Google is something to do with a computer.
Casey, still just 4.5 years old, also isn't quite sure what to make of all of this.
What? Why do they click on it? I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Casey and Finnegan's puppeteer says there's nothing like Mr. Dress-Up today.
Nobody would ever put that group of people together and say, go ahead and ad-lib half an hour show a day and we'll put it on the air. It wouldn't happen. But I think if it did happen, that probably children would respond to it.
And here I am at the tickle trunk.
And no doubt some of those children were introduced today to a character who for almost 30 years and more than 4,000 episodes charmed generations of Canadian kids before them. Ian Hannah-Mansing, CBC News, Vancouver.
Ben Nelms is CBC Vancouver's award-winning staff photographer, and here are some of the best images that he shared with us this week. And that's all for our Vancouver for this week. I hope you can join me weekday afternoons on CBC Radio 1 for On the Coast. Goodbye for now.